The amount of time that we spend sitting in front of a screen is a topic widely discussed by people of all ages. They ask themselves if they are watching too much television or spending too much time on social media. You will often hear parents complain that their kids spend too much time on their phone, playing video games. It's all they do. And I'm here to tell you that playing video games can actually have many positive effects on someone's mental health and their physical health. From overall confidence boosts to reduced psychological stress, video games have many positive effects on the people who play them. More and more people are playing video games every year. I only hope that everyone can realize the positive effects that video games can have and then embrace those effects to benefit their own health. When it comes to the effects of video games on mental health, people will often bring up the effects that violent video games can have on an individual, especially adolescents. It's a common misconception that violent video games will cause the people who play them to be violent. In the research I have done, I was not able to find any substantial evidence supporting the idea that violent video games cause people to be violent. There have been many studies performed to test these theories, but a study performed by BYU caught my eye. This study tested the effect that playing violent video games has on adolescents. And their study found that players with consistently moderate levels of violent video game play were more linked to higher aggression levels than those who started out playing a lot but then tapered off. This study interested me because they found that playing violent video games consistently can lead to higher levels of aggression. But the keyword is aggression, not violence. Aggression and violence can be correlated with each other, but they aren't the same thing. People who have higher levels of aggression are more likely to act violently, but it in no way means they will. Video game sales have only been going up, and violent crime has only been going down. So there's really not any correlation between violent acts and the amount of video games people are playing. They're not correlated at all, so video games should not be blamed for the actions that people take. Video games have no influence on that. I mean, not a substantial amount of influence. No statistically significant amount of influence. There's a big word for you guys. Okay, this is a whole science video, but let's go into what statistically significant means.
Welcome to Science Time with Jack.
Let's see, statistically significant. Let me find you guys the actual Google definition. Statistical significance refers to the claim that a result from data generated by testing or experimentation is likely to be an attribute to a specific cause. Basically, statistically significant means, hey, the data shows that something's actually going on here. Whatever is happening is not just due to random chance. So, with these studies on violent video games, they have not found any statistically significant evidence to say violent video games cause violence. So, all we can say is there's a random chance that if you play a violent video game, you're gonna do something violent, but it's all random. There's no data to show that the video games themselves cause violence. I've been rambling for far too long. Let's get back into it. A study reported on in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization found that violent video games do not appear to contribute to violence against people. They mainly tested on boys whose ages ranged from 8 to 18 years old, and there was no statistically significant data that showed an effect on aggression toward others and destructive behavior. There are so many factors that go into these behaviors that it's not fair to blame violent video games for aggressive or violent behaviors. Certain kids just like certain activities, and sometimes they like more aggressive or violent things. This person believes that children who play violent video games may be more likely to engage in such violence-promoting activities as loitering and drinking, which gets substituted by video game playing when a new video game comes out. She believes that people who like violence-promoting activities are gonna participate them in no matter what they are. So if there aren't violent video games, they're gonna do something else that fills that same niche. And I think that they make really good points about this. It makes sense that playing violent video games would be correlated with other violent promoting activities, and that they would not be correlated with causing violent or aggressive behavior. Constant exposure to violence through video games and any other way, like movies, TV, just scrolling through social media, they can all be harmful to anyone. In fact, the Journal of Postgraduate Medical Institute found that based on social learning theory, repeated exposure to violent video games may cause players to become numb to violence and become more confrontational, with an increased likelihood of mimicking the violence while reducing empathy. It's well known that exposure to violence, especially at a young age, can have many negative effects, but they make the point that people who display violent behaviors often have many other risk factors. With all studies on the effects of violent video games, there is one problem that can't be avoided. The level of aggression that someone is feeling can only be reported by that person. There's no scientific way to be like, oh yes, they are too angry today, or they are you're +3 angry or -2 aggressive. Doesn't exist. You just have to self-report it. So aggression looks and feels different in every person. So yeah, these researchers, they just have to rely on what their subjects are reporting and hope that they're being accurate about how they're feeling. And I don't think this makes any of these studies bad or unreliable. It just means you have to take that into consideration and accept the fact that the data may not be totally accurate, which if you look into a lot of studies and statistics, you'll find there's almost always something you can be like, well, violent video games can affect the minds of adolescents and adults, but there's just isn't any evidence to show that they cause violence. While violent video games can lead to decreased empathy and increased aggression, it is likely that there are many other risk factors that cause these behaviors. When it comes to how video games affect the health of someone, the effects of violent video games are often brought up. And I can confidently say that playing video games alone isn't going to cause anyone to be violent. Kids will probably be alright, no matter what they're playing. Just, it's up to the parents to kind of parent their own children and monitor what their kids are playing. I think playing video games is a good thing to do because video games can have many positive impacts on both kids and adults. Just playing video games has been shown to increase the overall mental health of an individual. A study conducted in Japan found that playing video games on any console increased life satisfaction among the lottery participants, and doing so for an extra hour a day led to a further improvement in mental health. It is important that after 3 hours of video game play a day, the positive effects did start to taper off. Video games are a great way to de-stress at the end of the day, or whenever else you may feel stressed. In fact, the National Library of Medicine has found studies that have shown that not playing video games can result in the poorest well-being outcomes. Video games can do a lot of things for a person, and one of those big things is actually social interactions. Now I know what you're thinking. How can video games increase social interactions? You're actually probably not thinking that. I'm sure a lot of you play video games online. Well, gaming, as you probably all know, is a very social activity. People from all around the world play and interact with each other. They build lifelong friendships, and it's believed that in-game relationships offer social and emotional support where players are able to discuss sensitive issues and exchange messages of affection. Social interaction is so vitally important to our health, and we live in a world where you don't need to be face-to-face to reap the benefits. Everyone needs positive emotions and support through social interactions, and video games are just another way to interact with others. Humans strive for a feeling of belonging, and the video game world is just another place where people feel like they can belong. Accomplishments make us feel good. Completing a task or chore makes us feel much better than we did before. Hey, I'll feel a lot better when I finish with this video. Video games have many tasks to complete, and you're often given rewards for completing these tasks. The sense of accomplishment that comes from completing tasks cannot be understated, and sometimes that feeling of accomplishment can be hard to come by. Video games make it a lot easier to feel this way because within the video game, accomplishments are regular, achievable, and immediately rewarding. Life can be really hard sometimes, but video games can make us feel good about ourselves when the real world can't. While all these effects from video games can be incredibly beneficial, it is important to remember that we still need to experience the real world. Go outside, touch some grass. It's good for you. Get some sunlight. You need the vitamin D. Video game addiction can be a huge problem as well. I mean, and just like anything else, video games are only good for you in moderation. Anyone can become addicted to video games, just like anyone can become addicted to alcohol or gambling.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
Video game addiction is a real thing that can have many negative health factors. It can cause things like increased aggression and decreased socialization, but it can often manifest in the form of personality dissociation, maladaptive cognitions, increased thoughts, and sleep disturbances. Is YouTube gonna get mad at me for saying that word? They probably are. I don't know. It's really important to remember to monitor everything you do and to make sure you are living a healthy and balanced life. It's even more important for parents to be aware of the negative effects that video game addiction can have, because children are the most susceptible to the effects of video game addiction. Video games are also a great way to teach both adults and children about mental health. They allow for opportunities to educate the public about anything, but the Digital Culture and Education Journal dives into how mental problems, specifically psychosis, can be portrayed in video games. They say that certain games were developed by independent studios in collaborative processes with researchers from university, together with people who recovered from or were at risk for symptoms of psychosis. Video games have this unique opportunity to educate the world on psychosis and many other mental health problems. They can especially teach children so that they can better understand how they or someone else they know is feeling. I believe that it is so important for children to see people like them in the media that they consume, and video games are just a great opportunity for this. Video games can educate on mental health, but they can also be used as a form of therapy. Video games are stimulating for our brains, and that alone can be beneficial to those who suffer from mental health disorders. Action and adventure games have been found to be the most stimulating type of video game, as they feature fast gameplay and engaging cinematic effects. Studies have found that playing action and adventure games allows for people to more easily follow a target located in a complex environment, and their ability to concentrate increases considerably depending on the type of game. Video games can actually make our brains feel and work better, but what if they could help us physically feel better? The Wii Fit Balance Board is a product that requires players to use their whole body to play the video games. A study was conducted to compare the effectiveness of the balance board games to normal balance training in children with cerebral palsy. These children were divided into two groups to test the effectiveness of the balance board, and what they found was astonishing. They found that Wii Fit balance-based video games are better at improving both static and performance-related balance parameters when combined with NDT treatment in children with mild cerebral palsy. As someone who has, worked with kids, it's very hard to make them do anything they don't want to do. So when you can make this some sort of treatment or therapy into a game, it becomes a lot easier for the child to want to do these treatments. That's why I think the balance board was more successful than just normal therapy, because the children wanted to do it and they were having fun doing it. Video games are supposed to be fun. That's what ultimately matters when you're playing a video game. But there are tons of added benefits. Video games can increase our overall mental health, be used as therapy for many mental disorders, be used as treatments for both physical and mental problems, and they can be used to educate the public. Now, they can, have some negative effects, if you play them too much, or if it's not age appropriate, it can have some repercussions later. Maybe. It's just important for everyone to monitor their own gaming experience, and especially when it comes to kids. As long as everything is managed, video games are great for everyone. They're great for young people and old people. They're great for sick and healthy people. No matter who you are, video games can have a positive impact on your mental and physical health. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Go play some video games or something.